Hi, it's been a long time. Happy 2024. I am going to continue our process of looking at Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, this week. And one of the ways that I am going through this process right now is to identify my own feeling state. And so I'm going to give you a few tools to do that. And then once we identify what we're feeling, we can look at that feeling in Brené's book. I am a little bit odd in some ways, maybe many ways. I don't like to read books straight through if they don't need to be read straight through, especially these kind of books. I like to just turn to the things that feel useful. And I know that doesn't work with all books, but with some it does. And so it may be a bit of me wanting to have more control, which is part of me. But for this one, it really works in terms of let's just look at what is needed and what's important right now. So the first thing that I want us all to do is just take a deep breath together. And then take a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper, and I want you to draw out where you feel tension, where you feel when you take that deep breath you don't feel the air going to, where you might be holding certain tensions. So we'll take another breath in. You can gather some supplies and do that. You can pause me until you're ready for the next step. So this is where I'm feeling tension right now. I'm feeling like in my head on my temples, feeling it right here in my third eye. And then I often feel a lot in the right side of my body. So right now it's like in this shoulder, and it's kind of been in this shoulder, but at the moment it feels like it's just like this shoulder is taking up more space than this shoulder. So there's some tension there. And a little bit in my stomach area, my gut area. So this is my image that I drew. The next step that we're going to take is we're going to take that information and we're going to look at a feelings wheel that connects the body sensations to our actual feelings. So we can take what we have just tuned into and move it into a vocabulary that helps us describe how we're feeling. And then we'll move into Brené's book. So let's look at the wheel together. You can again pause so that you can look at your body sensations and identify the words that associate with it. For me, this is a few things. I'm looking at, I feel cold, maybe just physically cold. It's a little chilly here. But as we go from the outside to the inside of the wheel, I'm noticing that that connects with feeling unwanted. And the larger feeling around that is potentially fear. I feel relaxed and still. And that connects to peaceful and happiness. It's Sunday. I feel like there's a stillness here right now. The work has been done for the week and the weekend, and today is a day of rest. I also feel very sensitive emotionally and a little bit of slouching, potentially due to my kind of this counteracting the feeling in my shoulder. So sensitive is intimate, happy, slouching is connected to abandoned and feeling maybe a little sadness. And we can continue to kind of travel down these sensitivities, sensory parts of ourselves to words and feelings. And I guess what I note is I'm not feeling just one thing. I'm feeling multiple things in this very moment. And so the question next for me is, which one do I want to focus on today? So in terms of my list, I would say that the largest piece that I'm looking at is sadness when we get to that like inner circle. So maybe I will look at sadness in Brené Brown's book. So as we explore sadness, we're looking at Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart. And in this chapter, it talks a little bit about what the difference between sadness, grief, hopelessness, despair, all of these kind of similar feelings are, and how we can kind of tell the difference, even anguish. And one of the first things she talks about in this chapter, in the section titled Sadness, is polling people through social media around what is your favorite sad movie. People answered Life is Beautiful, Beaches, The Color Purple, P.S. I Love You, Inside Out, Up, every movie ever where a dog dies. And so she talks about the feelings that come with it. And then people described what these films were. So relatable, what it means to be human. I feel less alone. I release some tears. I watch this when I need a good cry. And when I was thinking about this feeling of sadness and how often we want to push it away, I was thinking about a podcast I listened to recently by Glennon Doyle, where they interviewed Dan Levy around his newest, I think it's a movie, I haven't seen it yet, around sadness and that feeling of sadness, but also around grief. So she will get to a place where she defines the difference between the two. But was talking about how we all need sadness. So I'm going to go then next to a quote, which is in this chapter as well. Evolutionary theory suggests that we should embrace all of our emotions, as each has an important role to play under the right circumstances. So though you may seek ways to increase happiness, don't haphazardly push away your sadness. No doubt it's there for a good reason. And then she talks about four things that are important to know about sadness. 1, sadness and depression are not the same thing. Sadness is sometimes referred to as a depressed mood. However, sadness is a common but not essential feature of clinical depression. Technically, depression is a cluster of symptoms that persist over a period of time. That's important, over a period of time. These symptoms can include lack of interest in pleasant activities, loss of appetite for food, for many things, excessive fatigue and or insomnia, and difficulty concentrating. The second thing is sadness and grief are not the same thing. So although sadness is one part of grief, grief involves a whole group of emotions and experiences. And number 3, there are positive aspects to sadness, which we're like, really? But Joseph Forgas, a professor of psychology at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, writes, though much has been made of the many benefits of happiness, it's important to consider that sadness can be beneficial too. Sad people are less prone to judgmental errors, are more resistant to eyewitness distortions, are sometimes more motivated, and are more sensitive to social norms. They can act with more generosity too. So when I look at that circle and I realize like I'm feeling very sensitive right now and that's connected to sadness, that doesn't have to be a negative thing. It actually maybe helps, and this is the next piece, increase empathy. And so number 4, there's a reason we love sad movies. Researchers Gillian Hanich and colleagues investigated the sad film paradox. How can a negative emotion such as sadness go together with aesthetic liking and even pleasure? Their findings totally align with the 100,000 plus comments from our community. We like to be moved. We like to feel connected to what it means to be human, to be reminded of our inextricable connection to one another. Sadness moves the individual us toward the collective us. Their study revealed a highly significant positive correlation between sadness and enjoyment. However, this association is sequential. Sadness leads to feeling moved, which in turn leads to enjoyment. Hence, sadness primarily functions as a contributor to and intensifier of the emotional state of being moved. When we think back to our list of movies, as she talks about in this section, they were sad and they were also moving because they touched in on a part of ourselves that allowed us to feel, allowed us to cry, allowed us to release emotions. And we felt deeply moved by them. So that's my biggest section in the feelings wheel today. I think I had 3 bodily sensations that led to the feeling of sadness. Maybe you can look at your own and see what's biggest today, and you can put it in the comments, and then I can come back to the section in the book that talks about that. You can also put in the comments your fave sad movie, and we'll see kind of what we come up with. Thanks.